Come on in, everyone. We're about to start. We're going to be doing break and entering with software-defined radios, so if this is not what you want to watch, I would recheck your schedule. Or stay anyway. I don't know. I don't want you here if you don't want to see it. Do I get announced, or do I just run this? I guess just go for it? All right, well, thanks, guys. All right, so first and foremost, my name's Red Sand. I've been around this for a while. I ran with old school black security back in 2000s. A lot, if you ever did any hacking in the 2000s, you probably ran a bunch of my exploits. I work for a cloud-based MDR solution now. But in my free time, I get to do some hacking and enjoy and do that stuff again. So let's just jump right into it. So I want to first define, before we have any fun, ooh, that's slow. Come on, go. Here we go. For anything, all right, disclaimer. So you guys get the gist. Part of the reason that this is sensitive is that the FCC gets involved. You have to have licenses to broadcast on these ranges, and so if you be careful what you say and things like that. And so just be weary about that. But beyond that, especially when you're receiving data, it's really hard to prove you've received the data, right? Because it's just already out there. But again, beyond that, what I'm going to show you how to do could be used nefariously, so please don't, because I will certainly help them to track you down. It's my career, yours. So, all right, now let's have a bunch of fun. Let's do this. All right, so what are we doing? So let's define the problem. The problem is that I spent a bunch of money on RF equipment, and my significant other told me that I needed to do something with it or send it back. And so that really defined the problem for me. And so I live in a high rise in downtown Dallas. And so what I just did is I figured I'd hack our own key fobs and go from there. And so this is actually our infrastructure system. They're replacing it right now. You can only imagine why. I let them know. But from what I can tell, this affects not only our nation, but foreign nations as well. And so again, what we're attacking is these little key fobs. I'll show you pictures here in a second. But they've either got one button or two buttons. Sometimes they've got four buttons. They work at a distance. It's like your garage door opener for your house, but think about the commercial stuff, right? So if you live in a big apartment complexes, it protects the big garage doors. It protects the garage. Yeah, the parking garage. That's the word I'm looking for. It protects parking garages. It protects shared and common space. And so as we go into this a little further, one of the things I do want to touch on is, and the reason why I do this is that it's important to identify where you're safe, where you're secure, and to understand the risks around that. And so frankly, ignorant me thought that I was safe in my common space, safe all the way up to my door, because you have to get up the elevators, and that's just frankly a lie. And so it's good to know that so I can be more aware. And now it's my job to educate you guys as well as hopefully educate the world and get this thing upgraded. All right. So let's see. Did I cover everything else? I don't like reading off my slides. So let's see. Yep. All right. Good deal. All right. So again, this started, so I like to tell a story. So this started as I bought equipment and I don't know anything about software-defined radios. And so I'm just going to tell you like how I experienced it. I bought a bunch of equipment. I was told to do something with it. And I thought, well, let me do this. And so I simply flipped it over to the back. I got the FCC ID number. I took that to Google. I looked that up on fcc.gov. That tells me the megahertz frequency range it's supposed to lock in at. And so then I loaded Windows tools to start. Embarrassing to me, but that's where I started. And so I'm going to go through that process. So here's some examples of software-defined radios. They are getting a lot cheaper, which means you can do a lot more with them. The thing about SDRs, if you guys don't know this, I know you guys a lot of you probably do. Basically, it's a radio controller that's an FPGA that can be configured and changed and modified on the fly. You don't have to, no longer have to make a lot of embedded equipment and things to do RF. You can just lock in and do things, right? And so some of the things about these, they have different ranges. Some of them don't have transmission modes, and so the cheap ones don't. So if you want to start, and you can start reading these codes for $30, and you'll get the little RTL SDR, the little silver one right there. The blue one is called the ADOM Pluto. It's actually what's called a research device. It doesn't have great long-range transmission, and it caps down at a certain megahertz range. So, but you can do a firmware modification on it and change that. So that's the one I would probably recommend if you're just playing at home. And then, of course, when you're going hard, I definitely would recommend the Lime SDR. That's my favorite. So, yeah. All right. Let's keep moving on here. So that's the toys I bought. Now let's define what we're going after. Do any of these keys look familiar? Yep, that's what we're doing. You guys want to find out how they work? All right. Sweet. These things are cheap, they're fun to use, they're easy. Here's how they work. And I'm going to blow the game right out of the gate. You guys remember Weigand and proximity? Yeah, this is Weigand, except now you transmit it much further. Yeah. All right, so let's keep going here. So the way it works is, and it goes football fields away. I'll explain that further, but basically these little modules here are Weigand receivers. I'll blow the stack now. I implemented this in software using a software-defined radio. I also implemented a transmitter, and so we'll go through that process. But basically, this is the starting line, is that these are what they look like. Let me pop out real quick. I'm going to show you some other examples of the range of all the things that are getting hit here. They look like these. They look like these. I think this one might work. This is a new one on me, but it's Weigand over 13.5 megahertz, so that should work. This one right here, this device here, that's a receiver. These guys right here, all of these, all of them, all of these guys, and so on and so forth. All right, so you get the picture, right? So in my mind, the scope is pretty broad. When I look at access for buildings, it's either close proximity, which has the sister building uses, which we all know how that works, and then this is the more long range, which is basically the very similar experience. And so the way it works is those little things are plugged into some sort of logic control. I've actually, okay, let me back up. I've never actually seen the back end of this. I have no one else to talk to about this. I did all this on my own. So if any of this is wrong, I will actually take some corrections because I just went at this by myself. But the way I imagine that these work is that they're tied into some sort of circuit that relays that Weigand code back digitally over a wire to a serial port or something where a computer is there that runs software that takes that in, that looks up in a local database and says yes or no. It's kind of how I imagine that works. This guy's nodding. I think that makes me feel better. All right, good. Good ear. He's always nodding. All right. We're friends now. Fuck. Click that, Tim. You got this, bud. Here we go. All right. All righty. So, great. I defined the problem. Now let's start defining kind of how we unpack this, right? Again, I started with simple Windows tools. I'll get more advanced, but I had to start somewhere. I started with cubic SDR, and what I did is, and so this is what's called a heat map, or that's what I call a heat map. And so, again, so I went to the FCC website. My specific one said 295 megahertz. So I said, okay, I know where to start. So I punched in 295 megahertz, and you'll see that kind of right here. And then I just held the button down, and then you'll see there's streaks of energy going across at that range. And also you'll see, if you guys may not know this, but I like this. These are called harmonics. Yeah. So you can actually pick up shit on frequencies you're not supposed to on accident. Okay, we'll get into that too because there's some really cool things you can do about sample rates and harmonic sampling. Okay, let's keep going here. So anyway, I got that. And I thought, well, that looks interesting. That looks like what I'm looking for, but what the hell does that actually mean? And so after Googling more, I came across the next tool. Wait, that's actually not true. So what I did is I went back and I recorded it in this as a WAV file, and then I found out you could open it up in Audacity. So Audacity, so my DJ friends use Audacity to make beats and shit, and apparently you can also do it for RF. So to that point, this actually really helped me out. I put this together, and this will maybe help you. I realized this is music. So we're playing music on notes at certain intervals, right? And so I'm just going to help put that into more perspective. But this is what it looks like when it goes across, when you cut it horizontally. So what we're looking at is the amplitude. Yes, sir.
So if you're talking about turning this into, what frequency range are you looking at in Audacity? Because I thought that it was limited to 20,000 hertz.
No, so this is this is what's called is 295 megahertz, and what you do is then you do what's called harmonic sampling, where you bring it all the way down.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so this is what it looks like, a little energy pulses. And I thought, well, what do they look like together? So this is what the data looks like going across. So you'll see it's a bunch of da-da-da-da-da dots. And so I counted them up. There are 33. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I took that number 33. I went back to the FCC registration information. Lo and behold, it says Wiegand 33-bit implementation. I thought, okay, now I know what protocol it is. I know it's Wiegand. I know that's what the data looks like. How do I figure out what the Wiegand code actually is, and how do I actually do that with technology? So keep in mind, guys, I'm 3 hours into this, and at hour 3, I actually figured it. So I figured out I used a pencil and paper and was able to do it manually and figure out the bit sequence. And so I'll show you what I did. And so from there, it took 3 weeks to actually write the code. So we'll go from there. So again, you guys might see a little bit of a pattern here. All right, so let's talk about initial stuff. So before I know what the data represents, we already have a vector of attack. Do you guys see that? Let's go back. Does that data look like it changes at all? It doesn't. So if we're playing a musical note or a piece of music and you press play on your MP3 player, that will work. So immediately, without having to know how the hell it actually works, you can record the sound and then retransmit it, and that will help you, that'll open the door. All right, so that's level 1. Any questions on it? We already started cloning them automatically. All right, next. Oh, wait, wrong way, sorry. I'm lying. All right, so, and I need to, so before I keep going, I do want to cite Holly Grace, I believe that's her name. So I found some of her research that did cite, and she had gotten up to this point, and so I think I just want to take a moment. It's always important to acknowledge the folks that have done work around us, especially women in security, and so I just want to throw that out to her. But I didn't want to stop there. I was hungry to find out more. So what I'm really good at is software. I'm really good at software. And so if I can get this to software, I can do a lot more shit with it. And so I thought, that's what I got to do to make me feel like I've kind of kicked this over the fence. So let's go into the process. How do you do that? It's called data demodulation. Remember modem, modulation, demodulation? Demodulation, we're going to break it down into bits. So here's an example of a bunch of different demodulation algorithms. If you guys are familiar with it, I know that a lot of people play with PSK and ASK and OOK. Those are very popular. That is not what they're using in this context. I do think that there are implementations of this in FSK that will break down into Wiegand, basically come back to Wiegand. But for the implementations I've seen so far, all the ones I've caught, and they're actually called differential pulse position demodulation. And so let's explain that. I know this gets a little kind of nerdy and confusing, but we'll get to the part where we start messing with stuff, I promise. All right, so this is the science of it. This is important, so in case I die, you guys can keep this project going. So here's, sorry, because I can't maintain it forever, guys. All right, pulse position modulation, this is how it works. All right, we got amplitude, we got band, and then time. So basically the waves are going across in a linear time span from, in this example, right to left. I guess that's fair. Yeah, right to, I guess it does. No, it goes left to right. Yeah, left to right. Left to right, thank you. All right, and so in this context, what we're going to be looking at is the amplitude. In other scenarios, it may be different. And so what you guys, does this look similar to what you guys saw on that thing? Little pulses every periodically? Awesome. So what it comes down to, let's see, do I have that on this one? Perfect. Okay, there's 2 types. There's PWM and PPM. So the difference is PWM requires your clocks to be synced on both ends, but PPM doesn't. And so we're not going to talk about PWM because it's not beneficial, okay? So with PPM, this is how it works. So think of it, like I said, a measure in a song, and I've got 4 beats, okay? And so in those 4 beats, I have, we'll say there's 2 bits in those 4 beats. Now, I can either hit on the first note, and that's a 1, or I can hit on the second note, and that's a 2, and every 2 beats represents a byte, or a bit. Does that make sense? Maybe? Okay, let's try it again. So look at it here. Look at how this starts at the beginning, and it's on the 1 beat. and then there's a space, and then it's the 1 beat. So we know it's a 1, or it's a 0, and it's a 0. But look at this shift. There's a shift, a pause, and then it hits on the upbeat, right? And so now we've shifted to a 1. Now we're in the shifted, so it's now what they use called shifted registers, where or also because a finite state machine, where you're shifted into a position now where now I'm in an offset position. I'm in the position of 1. So when I know that the beat is the exact same space away from me at the 1 position, it's still a 1. But when I get a half beat in front of me, I'm back to the 0 position. Does that make sense? So when you do this, when you send it down the wire, I don't have to know, our clocks don't have to be in sync because I can calculate this based upon the starting beat. I know. Everybody's eyes are glazing over.
I think I might have a way to explain that easier.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll give you the mic when I'm done. No, it's good. I'm good. I'm just fine. Yeah, I appreciate it. All right, so I appreciate it. Okay, so in this, let's talk about a little bit more advanced stuff. So, like I said, I gave this presentation one time in San Antonio, and so one of the guys in the crowd challenged me because I had a little bit of extra time and said, well, why don't you hack my key fob? It's at 415 megahertz. And I said, well, that's fine. Let's do this on the fly. Well, come to find out, his is much older, and the space between each beat was much wider than the stuff that I've been working with. And so I had to go back and introduce a variable time that you can change based upon that beat size. And so for this, the Monarchs, or the ones that we're going at that works for my demo, is a value of 12. But I think for the older stuff, you would actually reduce that value maybe to an 8 to make it wider so it falls into sync of where everything hits. So again, that's something we need help figuring out. So if you guys have older ones, play with that value and let me know when it finally starts working, and that will help me update the software. All right. So now that we got that solved and we know where the bit stream, how to put this into a bit stream, let's break down Wigan again, right? Because it's always good to have a refresher. All right, so the way the bit stream works is with Wigan, you have parity bits actually on either end and some in the middle, depending. So in this example, I did 33-bit. It goes as old as 26-bit, which is the original stuff, which gives you about this much space to use as far as data. You get a facility code, and then you get a card number, and it's usually about 24 bits. And so 24 bits plus a facility code of 1 byte actually equals 33 bits because you always have parity bits on each end. So for the RF guys out there trying to demodulate, remember if you see data streams going across, always assume there are parity bits on both ends of it because that's how everybody does their data. So if they're sending 8 bits down the wire, it will be 10 bits because you'll have parity on both ends. I've heard affirmation from this from so many people this weekend, so it's just a good reminder when you're doing this. But so, again, so the gist is that you have a facility code, and then you have your unique ID number. The facility code identifies what building it is, or it could be the garage door versus the front door. And you may have 2 buttons, or you may have 4 buttons. Each one will have a facility code and an ID number it sends. The facility code is there's 2 ways I've seen doing it. I've got an example here where the facility code is different, but the ID number is the same. And then I've got an example from somebody in the crowd where they're both different. And so either way, it doesn't really matter because when we start sniffing these out of the wire and we start doing the enumeration of this stuff, it's very easy to understand. Anyway, again, the idea is that, again, we take that bit stream out of the air, we convert it into a RF number, and so this actually comes into a hex value or a 33-bit bit number. And so when you break this hex number down, the facility code is 16, and my card ID number is 146350013. Oh yeah, looks like I zoom into this. Good for me. All right. All right. So like I said, let's get to the more fun part. Let me show you how I actually did it. So again, what the goal was. All right. What the goal was is to break this down and basically implement this in software what they were doing with hardware. And so I had never actually worked with GNU Radio before. It's actually a beast to understand to begin with. It's really complicated at first for me. I actually didn't want to do GNU Radio. I thought the RTL SDR libraries would be a lot easier. It seemed just a lot faster to get involved. But the downfall of that was I could never transmit. Right, and so it was worthless to do that, and I wanted to do the full spectrum to show you I could do both ends of it, because I ain't no punk. Alrighty. So I'll explain this a little bit. I know, again, you guys eyes are gonna glaze over, but this is what it looks like to put this together in GNU Radio. The secret of me figuring this out is Wikipedia, and that's it. Wikipedia and a few extra Googling, a little bit extra Googling. So what you have on the left are your sources. Now, in this example, you'll notice I have a source for Pluto SDR. Pluto is my ADOM Pluto, the little blue thing. The RTL SDR is what I have plugged in right now. It's silver. I've got a Lime SDR. The other thing you'll see there's a WAV file. Now, the reason that's important is that when we go into transmission and you don't want to break the FCC laws, you can transmit to a WAV file and then replay it and validate your work. So just, again, in case anyone tries to get me in trouble, I got proof I didn't never do that. All right. Again, so what it does is it goes from the left and it keeps going right. Google says that you need to do a high-pass filter and a low-pass filter and then an amplifier and then a gain control. And what I found is that I did all those steps manually, but come to find out, GNU Radio actually provides some modules that will do the majority of it for you in a single module, so it made it a lot smaller. One of the other things I learned is about downsampling. So downsampling, so what a sample is that it's how many bits that are turned on or off per individual moment that it receives the data. And so what that means is you can get a lot of data. So if I'm sampling 1 million bits at a time, that's a lot of data. The problem is that that million bits needs to represent whatever you're listening to, so 295 megahertz. If I were to do that true, I need a sample rate of 295 million, right? But that's not how it works. And so what you do is you can downsample it, and when you downsample it to, say, 1 million, that's what's called harmonic sampling, and it brings everything down. So what you don't know is it'll fuck you up when you start doing your math, and I can never figure out why I could never hear anything. Well, come to find out, I really wanted 100K or 200K, not 2 million, which is what I thought I was dealing with. Does that make sense? It's one of those gotchas. All right, so again, we put it through filters. The reason we put it through bandpass filters, low and high pass filters, is that we want to make sure the signal we're getting is as clean as possible. Because if we have a noisy signal, it's real hard to do stuff with. From there, we actually send it straight into an AM demodulator. That's the part where they apply the additional low pass, high pass, and gain controls. So gain control, the point to that is it amps up the amplitude as much as possible without fuzzing the signal. That way you can have it, that way it works as best as possible, basically. So just kind of as a side note, all of this stuff can be implemented using hardware electronics. It just so happens that you can use these modules to do it as well. So I want to make sure that I don't deviate and deviate from the original message that all this is RF stuff. This isn't just, I wrote a bunch of software to do this, okay? So this can definitely be done with embedded devices. All right. Another thing that I do is, so this is actually an older one on me. But the basic thing I do at the very end is that I bring the level down a little bit. Let's see, it's right here. I bring down a constant of 0.7. I bring down the signal. And so the reason I bring down the signal is that I want to use 0 as a value to measuring whether or not I have a peak or if I have a signal there. So what I did is I brought the noise down just below 0 so that it's all fuzzy right there. So when I do get signals, it's true 0. And so what I mean by that is, let me show you how it works. I already tested this before you guys got here, so I know I'm good. All right. So what we're seeing right now is a couple plot graphs. And so what I have to do is I have to take off the auto range. It's never done me well. Also, I have to increase the time range. I think I'm going the wrong way. Nope. What am I doing? There we go. So we want to get into something closer to 80 or 100, 160. Then I'm going to bring this down. So you see right now the signal is at a negative 0.03, negative 0.3. Bring it down. All right. And I'll probably do that. All right. So we've got a nice solid signal here, right? And so watch when I click this. And so the way it works is that, again, they go pew, pew, pew and run across. Okay? And then what I did is I wrote a few different modules. The first module is a peak detector. The peak just says, when the hell, what is a peak? And what is my peak value greater than X, right? And so I chose 0 because that's just made it more simple for me. So all that says that once it gets here and it's a peak, it passes the samples off that are peaks. It says, hey, this is a peak. Go, go, go. So the next step is then to demodulate that. And so inside here, we have a couple values. We have the sample rate and the pulse width. And so the sample rate, again, for the entire project, I'm using 1 million samples a moment. And then, like I said, the pulse width, that's for what you need to adjust for doing older types of attacks, these older key fobs, probably from the older 2000s, maybe 90s. But it should be able to work. You just have to adjust that higher or lower. And so let's go back and finish the process here. I will make this visible. I apologize. View, zoom in, view, zoom in, view, zoom in. All right, so you guys see that going across? So that's the bit stream, and that's the actual zeros and ones that I was able to pull off the RF. And then so right here, you'll note that I find that there's 36 bits. So in this one that I got off of Amazon, there's 36. And the example I'm going to do for a second, there's 33. And so in this example, so I think there's a bug in my parity checking algo. I'll show you in a second, but because it seems to be just fine and reliable. So on this one, it's facility 1. Let me go back and run it again. Oh, it is running. Oh, good for me. All right. All right, so let's hold it again. Again, this is the first button, the facility code of 1. See it going across. It keeps popping, popping. Yeah. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the second button. You ready? What changed? That's it, right. So now I have confidence, to some degree, that my shit works, right? Do you mind, would you hit the other one? Yeah, on cue. Dance, puppet. So in this one, yeah, that's fine. So in this one, there's 33. There's a different code. The facility code is 16, and the ID number is completely different. Go ahead and do it again. The other button, if you don't mind. Okay, so in this example, so this is actually from the building. The facility codes are 13, and the ID number, I think, is completely different. How do I scroll up? There we go. Yeah, see, there are 2 right there. It ended with a 1. So in this example, they're completely different. So I'm going to get into this a little bit further, but let's talk a little bit about that key space. So this number can be anywhere between 0 and several million. For 24-bit, several million. And for 32-bit, obviously, it's an unsigned integer. Or not, maybe it's not obvious to you. It's an unsigned integer, so that's 0xFFFFFFF, right? So it's 200 and something billion. But what I've seen in production or out in the field is that the values, I've never seen anything less than 600,000. And I've never seen anything greater than 1.4 million. So even though the manufacturers have all this key space, it seems like there's this sweet spot they're using. And so when you're doing this, keep that in mind if you ever have to enumerate and brute force it on your own. It's just much easier. People live there, right? So it's just much easier to sit outside for 2 minutes and pick it up out of the air. But if you have to force it, I'm sure there's ways of doing that. So let's get into that. Next. All right, so this is my setup at home. Like I said, I live in an apartment complex in a high-rise. So I was able to set my laptop up near the back door and then put it 10 floors up. And so I was getting building codes from I don't fucking know where, actually. But I can tell you over 1 weekend I got everybody in my building's code. Another side note, so if you live in an old building, and the pipes aren't properly grounded, you can turn your building into an antenna. All right, so I've already kind of spilled the beans on that. That's what it looks like. That's an old key fob I used to have. Actually, I broke it because I took these apart and I was working to reprogram them and dump the data, and I fucked it up, and so I got in trouble downstairs, and so I can't break anymore, so I quit messing with those. I started buying some. All right, so where are we at, right? So In my experience, in my opinion, I've demonstrated that not only can I find where the data is, I can read the data, I can show you what the data actually is, and then I understand more of the problem. So in that regard, I understand the key space problem, I understand more about vectors of attacking it, right? And so now that I know how to read it, let's go full ham, right? Let's write it. And so that's what's called modulation. So again, we have facility codes, we've got card numbers, we can clone these things out of the air, so all I have to do is replay what I hear, but if I want to start, brute forcing or doing more things to the data, then let's go to the next step. All right, so this is the modulation stuff, and so I don't know if I publicly released this yet. I'm just waiting to see if I get in trouble or not. But I did confirm that this will be a part of the Pen2 project, and so I'm sure as long as I don't get in trouble, we'll have both modulation and demodulation in there. But this is the way it works. It's basically the exact opposite. So what we do is we go through a root raised cosine filter. Man, I'm going fast. Good for me. We put it through a low-pass filter. Again, we're trying to remove all that noise before we send it out. We put a constant in there to reduce some of the way the data looks. That's for whatever reason, I took part of this as an example from somebody else that wrote a ppm modulator, demodulator for RC cars. And for whatever reason, he kind of helped me on this last bit because those just constant values seem to work for me. But let me know if you guys have any problems, and I'll be happy to debug and adjust it for you guys. But just as a side note on this, so again, this goes back to RF. Even though I implemented this in GNU Radio, I also breadboarded this. So you'd be surprised what you can order from China off the internet. I guess you aren't, huh? So I took the thing apart. I went through and marked every piece of electronics and wrote it down, looked it up, figured out what it was, ordered it from China, looked at the circuit, breadboarded it at home, right? Pretty basic. Like I said, I broke one or two. Part of the problem I was having is that they don't make the reprogrammers for the circuit anymore. So what I had to do is I had to order 16 of them to be generated, to be made, so I could reprogram these. And so if you want, you can actually take these apart, apply it, dump the data, modify the facility code and the Wigan code, or your code, and then reprogram it back, right? And so if you want to get that far, you can literally clone somebody else's fob as a fob and keep rolling. So that's perfectly possible and absolutely doable. You can also breadboard your own reprogrammer. I kind of gave up halfway through that, though. It's a lot harder than it sounds. Let's see. Okay. So what are the limitations of this, right? Because a part of it is to understand what the attack surface is and what all we can do. The reason I have the turtles there is it takes a little bit. Every time you hold the button down, it sends the message 5 times, and then it stops, and you have to press the button again. Or it may pause, and then it'll keep doing it. And so with that, what that means is that we can't brute force it really effectively, not without patience. Now, somebody did another project about some harmonization tricks and things you can do to speed some of these things up. I don't know if it applies to this, but I'd certainly be interested to find out. That's just something that's exploratory that I'd certainly like to know more about. But really what we're talking about, again, with the 33-bit key, there's 24 bits, which is 16 million values. But like I said, I hadn't really seen anything past 1.4 million and anything less than 600,000. Additionally, we talked about the facility codes. Facility codes are, once again, meant to differentiate for buildings or certain access to certain locations. All right, so what's the market impact? So I polled my local group of people, and from what I can tell, it's split into the complexes that, like what I have, and then it's split into the proximity cards. Now, in my understanding, they both have the same issue. They can both be cloned. This one just works much further away. There are what are called smart apartments now, where it's end-to-end, smart apartments, where it's end-to-end technology integration, where up to your front door lock. And so I don't know if you guys saw a couple months ago, somebody was in Forbes magazine because they were able to unlock somebody's front door from the cloud. So he and I talked about opening up a cloud service, breaking and entering service as a cloud offering between the two of us. So here's what I would like to ask for you guys is because I have a limited ability of asking people where they live and what kind of security system they have, I need some help kind of getting metrics from everybody. So if you could, I guess, DM me or help me put together a poll, because what I'm trying to figure out as I communicate this further down the line is how big is this problem? Again, from what I can tell, it seems big. But that also goes back to the question is it important? And so like I said, coming from me, my personal safety and privacy is pretty important. I always thought that part of this is a secure system. And to me, to know that it's not, it really put my mind in a different thought process. And so we either need to decide as an industry or as an entire country whether or not this is security or not. And so if it's not security, then we don't have to deal with the problem, and we focus on our front doors, and it's not a big deal, as long as we all assume that risk. But if we expect this, then our entire nation's infrastructure needs to go replace this and fix it. And there's no in between. So I feel defeated because I don't see anything changing. So it goes back to business. If I already have it implemented, what incentive do I have to replace it? I don't. I'm already making my money. The margins in real estate aren't that great, right? Like they're always trying to cut costs. I have a couple customers there a couple of my customers are in the real estate industry and do exactly this. And so I know what the business models look like, and I know that they'll laugh if they have to replace it in 1,300 apartment complexes across the nation. So in regards to that, I don't know how to solve the problem. All I know how to do is raise awareness to it. I'd certainly like some feedback on that as well. All right. So let's talk about this. So we kind of went through the process. Let's talk about next level mess. Let's talk about some of the fun things I did. So guess what? If your building is an antenna, you can just broadcast noise and jam the signal so nobody can get in. You can also keep broadcasting open codes so the doors never lock. We already have a homeless problem, so I don't want to get evicted, but sound like a good idea. We also have the theory that there's God codes. I haven't proven this yet, but it sounds like it makes sense to me. I know that fire departments and things like that use a manual access bypass, a gate bypass. It's a little hook thing that completely disables this shit, so it doesn't apply. I know that the constable, when I was served a subpoena to testify a few weeks ago, that she has a key fob. But I also know that the guys that manage this stuff have broader ones that work across all their customers that they service, right? Because they're not going to walk around with a big keychain full of key fobs. So I'll take help, but that's a theory we think we can prove. We think it's out there. It's like an Easter egg hunt. We just got to figure out what it is. All right, so let's go to the next step. So again, I'm an application, I'm a dev guy. So application bugs, is there any impact where you can do things with a Wigen code that's maybe that code gets translated into a couple characters or something that you can do later that you can pollute over a period of time? I don't know. I wasn't able to legally get a copy of the software that ran this stuff. But again, if somebody has a copy of it, I'm happy to reverse engineer it. I'm really good at that, and we can find out more information. Again, I talked about the expectations of security and privacy. When you walked in here, did you expect that you had privacy at home by doing this? Yes? No? Or did you just assume that it wasn't safe in the apartment complex to begin with? Yeah? All right, maybe I'm just foolish. That's fine. All right. So additional suggestions. We talked about a unique facility code per user. Could be possibly, so that's not my suggestion. The vendors out there in the field say a solution is to use a unique facility code per user. I don't see how that helps. That doesn't benefit anybody because I just sniff one. As soon as I get it, I can redo it and I can do other things. So it may keep people from trying to enumerate them, but in the grand scheme of things, everybody has to access their home at some point in time, and it's just a matter of moments before you've got one. All right. How fast am I? Oh, okay. So closing statement. So what do we got? New key fob systems, we went through that process. Getting bidirectional, making it rotating keys. That's going to the car process. Now that just opens up more problems of jamming it and then rebroadcasting it and taking those measures. I kind of like to have more of the philosophical conversation that I feel like my own personal safety is more important than my Tesla. And so I feel like this should be done at home first and then trickle down to the car industry and not the other way around. So I just wanted to point that out. All right, you guys have any questions? I'm sorry, you go ahead now. I apologize.
Well, does anybody not understand how the key space works, how they go from 0 to 1 to 1 to 0? Or has everybody got it now? If everybody's got it, there's nothing for me to explain.
Okay, great.
At the time, you thought I can't see behind me. I thought you thought that people didn't have it, and I had a way to say it easier, but you're good.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate your help. Yeah, I like to transcribe it back to music because not everybody is into bits and bytes, and so something that we all can share kind of helps a little bit. Yes, sir, in the back on the left.
Yeah, so you kept saying a couple times, like, about getting in trouble. What do you mean, like, vendor, law?
Yeah, so you don't want to get in legal trouble. So transmitting, again, FCC on these certain ranges, you have to register with the FCC to be able to do that. And so theoretically, the FCC helicopters can come down on you. I don't really see that being a thing. So let's talk about the risk of it, the actual risk. They have to triangulate you. And if the range is only a few football fields, unless you're broadcasting from a tower, you probably should be just fine. But again, this is all hypothetical. Fuck. Yes, sir, go ahead.
So the reality is, until they solve the problem, you need to bypass, or you need to disable the ability of this to work. And then you can't disable your key fob, but you convince your apartment complex that you're important enough, and you put an old-fashioned mechanical lock on it.
Yeah, basically.
And that way, they can't, they can break your key fob lock, but then they gotta do it complete.
Yeah, well, yeah, all those old push button locks don't work well either. Any more questions? Yes, sir. I'll come back to you.
I mean, I guess, this is the same if it's an RFID, except that we could really limit the distance. You can still jam it, right? But, I mean, it's harder to harvest.
Yeah. Yeah, this is over VHF. This is over the same thing your TVs are on.
I understand that, but there's proximity to RFID that really is short proximity. Sure. There's television, UHF stuff with RFID that is used in systems similar to this, for the purpose of distance to get through a car.
Yeah, so we're talking 500 feet. Like I said, I was getting things from blocks. I don't know where these buildings are. I don't even think they're downtown. I'm not really sure because I was so high up, but it'll be a lot of information.
I was getting at, like when you're doing everything you can to get short proximity, again, it doesn't include cars, but it looks like walking up to the door. How good can you get on your sniffer to pick that up from a distance?
Yeah, so the door proximity is not the problem we're solving. That's at 128 kilohertz. This is over VHF. So this is, so it's not, this is 500 feet. It's the same thing as what your TV came on in the 80s and 90s. Same signals.
Okay, so you're specifically addressing that.
Yes, no, this is an old problem found in a new implementation. Yeah.
You did show 13.5 megahertz per bit, and those are short distance.
13.9 megahertz. Yeah, but still in the so that one I said maybe I hadn't fucked with that, but I've tested everything from 295 up to 415. Yes, sir. You next.
In your testing, did you ever run across any of these key fobs that use a rolling code like a car does?
So far in my testing, I have not found any that have implemented a rolling code yet. No, sir. Yes, sir.
So I was interested in the price to be able to monitor everybody. What's going through my mind is, couldn't I go through every apartment complex through some of the bushes, maybe like a solar?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, bro. Yeah, bro. Yeah, bro. Yeah, you could do that. That may have happened. Yeah. So so basically what you do is it's a Raspberry Pi with a lithium battery, right? And then you can actually set up trickle charges too if you want to trickle charge that back. But yeah, you just throw it in the bushes or put it in the ceiling or in the stairwell. Go ahead.
Assuming you won't get in legal trouble, when and where can we find it?
Yeah, so this is already up, man. I published this back in March. It's on GitHub.com. It should be a part of this. You know what? No wonder nobody downloads this. So if you follow me on Twitter, I already posted it earlier today, Redstand BL4CK. That would be the easiest way. And hopefully I can talk to these guys and get it integrated. Also, it's going to be added to Pin2. The guy at Zero just told me that, so that's exciting. Any more questions? In the back there.
You said you captured this for like a week or so. Did you do anything to try and see like metrics and then see if there were outliers? Like, yeah, you got this range to this range, but weird.
No, your point, I never had any outliers. The range was 600K to around 1.4 or so, and maybe it was 14 million. I can't remember. Is 1.4? I can't remember the number. I think it was 1.4. It was a lower range than I expected. Much lower range than I expected. But I don't think that's not to say that that's not possible. Just my experience out in the field. Go ahead.
Now, you've never gotten any one of the controller receivers. You're only been working with the box.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you can get your hands on one too. Right?
Sure. Yeah, but I just figured it's easier to implement it myself. Yeah.
No, for sure. But one of the possible responses is to getting the data out of that and doing some kind of monitoring, some kind of analysis.
So I work for a company, right? I own my own company, and I pitched to them making RFIDs, and they laughed me out the door. So they don't think the market's there for that. So, yes, sir.
Why not set up a crowdsource thing, kind of like wiggle.net, so that people could run it, make a mobile rig, then it would just report in.
That's a good idea.
You have the dispersion, you could set it up if you wanted to, so it doesn't collect all of the actual numbers, but analyzes it local, and then just sends up the location data.
Oh, I like that. So I will take. So that's why I'm here, guys. I'm here to find, see if the community is interested in this or not. If you're interested, let's do more stuff. I write big data security analytics algorithms, and I do other shit. So this is just for fun for me. So any more questions before I know I'm running out of time? No more questions? All right, great, guys. Thank you guys for having me out.